Something completely different. Following that exchange with Peter Doocy, just take a look at how many times President Biden has snapped at other reporters. Roll tape.
Do you think that that might incentivize more people to come over illegally?
If you guys keep sending that garbage out, yeah.
Why are you so confident he'll change his behavior, Mr. President?
Yeah, I'm not confident changing behavior. What do you do over there?
Mr. President, can I ask you a quick question on Israel before you drive away?
No, you can't.
Why are you waiting on Putin to make the first move, sir?
Do you think it places a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a...
Well, there you have it. For the umpteenth time, we've played it. There you go. Kayleigh McEnany is with us. At a moment like this, I don't think it looks good when the president loses his temper. What say you?
I agree. Let me correct one thing you said at the top of the show, Stuart, at the top of this segment about Tampa. Tampa is behind me, as you can see. People are not just wearing hoodies, they're wearing parkas and boots. These are the one opportunity in the year that we have to do this. But anyway, that aside, yes, I don't think it is a good look, especially because this was Mr. Unity and Mr. Civility. Look, you knew who Trump was coming into office. He was this guy who kind of threw punches, but Biden told us he was Mr. Unity. And he's done anything but that. And to me, Stuart, what that shows is he just simply can't handle the heat. When Trump came in, the reporters' reactions were as ferocious and it was immediate. He never got a chance to complete full sentences. He was always interrupted. It's been a different interaction with Biden, and they turned up the heat just a bit, and his reactions are very telling that he just simply can't handle even the slightest bit of criticism.
That's very true. You were the press secretary for President Trump, and I remember distinctly reporters being rude, directly rude, to the President of the United States. Acosta, for example, just almost insulted him to his face. I don't see any of that rudeness going towards President Biden. Even so, he responds in a rude fashion. There's a complete difference here between the press corps in your day in the White House and the press corps today with Biden.
No doubt about it. You know, I watched the press conference last week, and a lot of people have changed their tune and said, oh, the press is now asking hard questions. But when I watched that press conference, I watched it through the eye of a press secretary. I watched it through the lens of having sat by a president as he gave a press conference, watching reporters, number one, ask follow-ups on the same topic. So whatever President Trump said, if he would have said, oh, a minor incursion is one thing, there would have been an immediate follow-up. Not only that, there would have been an interruption mid-sentence, and there would have been rudeness going along with it. This press conference, Stuart, a lot of times they just moved on. They didn't hold him accountable for his statements. They never interrupted, and they had a sense of decorum, which I think every president deserves. You know,
you're not allowed to criticize the president. I've got an example. The host of The View shut down CNN's Lisa Ling after she tried to criticize President Biden for his comments about Peter Doocy. They won't let anyone criticize the president. Watch this, please.
I just think he should acknowledge that he was a poor example for...
Well, but no, I'm sorry. Yeah. He should acknowledge he's human.
So, okay, so he's, oh, the stupid SOB, he says. It's nothing compared to what Trump said or did.
I agree with you, but we can't keep comparing him.
Yes, you can.
You can only have one point of view on The View. That's clear. Last word to you, Kayleigh.
Oh, it's very clear. It's why they can't find a conservative. They've been looking for more than a year. And I've had conservatives reach out to me and said, you know, I have an invitation, but I declined. You know, they can't find anyone who wants to come on because it's four voices that don't allow a conservative viewpoint to speak. It's unfortunate, but hey, I guess that's what they think sells.
Can I just ask you a quick question about Jenssaki, the current press secretary? I think she's doing a pretty good job in a very difficult situation. What say you?
Yeah, I think she's a talented communicator. No doubt about it. It's a hard job. They ask tough questions. But that being said, I think some of her dismissive comments, I wouldn't have been able to get away with Sarah Sanders. One such example, when asked about the crises and the pain of the American people on Friday on The View, she said, you know, go get a margarita and go to kickboxing class.
Saw that.
You know, Sarah or I would have made a statement like that, it would have been top headlines everywhere, not ignored. But sure, she's a talented communicator. I just think she gets away with a lot more.
All right, Kayleigh, we'll let you go. Thanks very much for being with us. We always appreciate it, you know. Thanks a lot.